there are times when you feel like you need to get out of a color rut. You know, maybe you have your favorites that you lean towards, and I know I definitely do. And you looking at all these things on the internet maybe just isn't enough. Maybe it's just too much information, and you really just need to get a fresh eye for color. So I wanted to give you a couple suggestions on how to do that. First of all, paint store party. Get yourself to Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever Benjamin Moore, whatever store has a wall full of paint chips, and stand around and pick out pretty palettes from the chips. Just grab a couple things. Whenever I'm in Home Depot in order to get paint mixed up and I'm standing around waiting for them to do get the mixing done, I go over and just pick out colors kind of at random and sort of try to put them together and see if I can get something new and interesting, which has definitely worked. If you feel like you keep picking the same colors, because those are the ones your eye is attracted to the most, and again, you're trying to get out of a rut, you can deliberately choose things that you don't really love. Shuffle the chips up, deal them like cards, try something new and kind of crazy, see how it goes. You may surprise yourself, and of course you can always adjust in the end. So, a little bit of random selection could be a way to get out of a rut. Another possible inspiration source is children's books. If you're not a book illustrator, I'm a print and pattern designer. I've never illustrated for books, but go to your local library and stop by the children's department and look at the kids literature illustrations. First of all, you're going to love you're going to love the inspiration, the illustration inspiration, but see if any of the palettes stand out to you. See if when you're flipping through, anything inspires you in the way some children's book illustrators use color. Go to a fabric store. Whenever I'm at a fabric store, and I don't really sew, but I do buy a lot of fabric. I have a lot of fabric in my closets, and it comes in handy here and there, but mostly it's just sitting there because I'm not a great sewer. But whenever I am in a fabric store to get something, or a craft store, I always look at the fabrics because I'm a pattern designer and because that's my interest and my love. And color, of course, prints stand out to me, really strong prints that I'm drawn to, but sometimes the palettes stand out more than the prints themselves, especially when you're looking at a full wall full of bolts of fabrics. And grab a quarter yard of a few really eye-catching prints. I have a few prints that I just have on my bulletin board that I just think the palettes are so strong and beautiful, and it just really makes me smile. And either at some point I'm going to use something similar, or maybe it's just to keep me happy while I work at my computer. But either way, it can be inspiring. So definitely check out what's going on at the fabric stores. And that kind of brings up my next point about borrowing palettes. As artists, we want to do everything originally, of course. And when you see a really cool or unique pattern on another design, you may feel like, so if you go to a fabric store and you see a print that looks amazing and it has a perfect palette, you might feel kind of weird about just literally using those 5 colors or whatever it is for your own pattern. Let's talk about it. I think, first of all, my opinion on this, and others could disagree, and you have to go with what feels appropriate for you. But first of all, there's only so many color combinations in the world, right? I mean, there is a limit to things. You're, of course, going to, at some point or another, on purpose or inadvertently, overlap with things that are already out there, of course. But the other thing is, we're talking about using a palette at the beginning of our design process, picking out a palette at the beginning of our design process. So if you choose something that is directly from another design, and you're using it as a starting point, 90% of the time you're going to, as the design progresses, you're going to end up changing or tweaking the color to make it fit more with your artwork, right? So you might see a print that has 5 colors and it looks awesome and you want to do that, use that palette, but as you're doing your artwork you realize you have way more than 5 colors. So now you've got tones, now you need a little bit of contrast. You might find that the palette looks great, but it works only the way that design has color placement, but actually a lot of the colors, you know, when they overlap the way you want to do it, they don't quite meet up and you need to have more contrast, so you need to make one darker or lighter. You know, things get changed over the course of a design, and more than likely you're not going to end up with something that is so direct if you start with a palette that you got inspired by. Another hint that you definitely want to think about when you're talking about color is do not forget neutrals. I'm a total, I love bright color, and some of my my collections are certainly guilty of being like 85 to 95% like full volume colors. I know that is something that I do lean towards, but you need a few neutrals mixed in. Honestly, it can't all be neon orange and teal. You need to remember your grays, your beiges, your whites, places to give your eye a rest. And definitely as we talk about how to edit your work and how to look for things, we're going to be talking about neutrals. Don't forget that you need to give your eye a rest at some point, and they can really make for a much stronger palette. Now let's talk about colorways. Do you need them? This is something, you know, more that you will think about at the end of a project, really, rather than the beginning. But since this is a color section, I just wanted to address it now because it won't come up later. This question came up recently. I was talking to a fellow artist, licensed artist, and she was asking whether I usually submit designs with multiple colorways. And I want to say that the answer for me is usually I don't. If you feel you have 2 strong palette options and you really can't decide, that's fine. I mean, it's great to have colorways. There's certainly nothing wrong with colorways. It's just that you don't necessarily need to spend your time creating a second colorway. If it doesn't come naturally, you can come to that later on. Remember that with licensing, you are designing with no guarantees. So everything can be adjusted and revisited until you sign a licensing deal, at which point you've achieved your goal and you don't really need to worry about tweaking anyways. You want to have a strong collection to show, and you definitely should believe in your color scheme. But if you decide 3 months later that you want a different look, you're welcome to recolor and resubmit. So based on that thought process, I usually finish a collection with 1 palette and send it along to my agent to get it off my plate. And then later I may revisit a design or a collection and add another colorway. So 3 reasons why I might do this. First of all, sometimes I fall out of love. I think about a palette, I've done it, I finished the project and I wanted to move on, but then looking back at it in a couple months, I'm sort of like, I don't really love that, and I don't think it's the best way to show off the artwork, the motifs, the design. The color is not doing the artwork any favors, and I want to change that. So I just recolor it and send in something new. The second reason I might do a second colorway is because the design is strong, but it hasn't yet been licensed out, and I want to see if a second color scheme will be more appealing to buyers. So I want to, think about what maybe trends have changed slightly, and maybe I'm seeing, thinking of a new reason or new colors that could really make a design pop. And the third one, which is kind of what happened in this case of the Batik Surf collection, is I'm considering the art for a different product category than my original intent, and the original colors aren't as on trend or as appropriate for the new category. So I designed this. It was kind of for maybe bedding, maybe bath. We saw the sketchbook actually page a few sections back, so I think I did say bedding and bath, but I think maybe more bedding with this palette, and then more bath with this palette. And then when I went on to think about it as bedding, first of all, I designed this a year and a half ago, and indigo was really, really hot at that time. But also, I thought it would be a little too crazy if it was these bright colors. I thought an indigo look could be a nice way to bring this collection together for bedding. So there we go. That is my roundup on color. Now you're going to take a look at your assignment and start thinking about a palette and use some of the resources that I just went over. And in the next section, section 6, we're going to get down to actually designing.